Good morning, delegates. I've come here today to talk to you about female empowerment. In Article 1 of the United Nations Charter, it states that the main purpose of the organization is to achieve international cooperation in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights and for fundamental freedoms for all, without distinction to race, sex, language, or religion. In July 2nd, 2010, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously voted to create a single UN body tasked with accelerating progress in achieving gender equality and women empowerment. This is not a new topic, but since the late 1980s, it certainly has worn a new face. Girl power. Take a look at all of these characters. Take a look at these images that we see. Girl power. This is the new term. What does girl power really mean? One new definition is being shaped by today's pop artists. Take this recent video by super pop star Beyonce. Yeah, no. There's no sound. That would really change things.
Could you just give us a moment?
Yeah, if we could just play that for a second. This video has some really interesting mixed messages, which is one of the reasons I wanted to see it. This is a fairly new video. This is a video by Beyonce. I'm sure a lot of you know who she is. And she's kind of known for her girl power attitude towards life. But I want you to take a look at the video and see the mixed messages that girls are getting between the visual and the words. The words say, who runs the world? Girls do. But the video, the images, tells a very different story. So as soon as we get sound, you'll be able to hear that. Problem? Great. Hello? So, I want you to think about what you've just seen. The words say one thing, but the pictures say another. Did you see the contradictions between the words, "we run the world," and the imagery of the women? Did you notice the attire of the women, the sexy Nazi-esque dominatrix fantasy outfits in restrictive corsets and garter belts and excruciatingly painful high heels? Did you see the long, blonde, flowing hair of the strong black woman? Did you notice the submissive sexual posing, the gyrations and the writhing about on the floor and as they turned her upside down in these humiliating poses? Did you hear the words, "I'm just playing. I hope you like me. F you, pay me." And what is that supposed to mean? What's the message there? That we should be willing to put ourselves in positions where we have to sexually and emotionally manipulate men as long as we get paid? Is that the kind of message we want to send to young girls? It seems like a pretty dangerous message to be sending girls to me, especially under the title of girl power. Do you notice that at the end, the women salute the men? With all these mixed messages, what are women, and especially young girls, supposed to think? Even the term girl power itself is a bit contradictory. I mean, girls is a diminutive word for females, used mostly for children, and yet women, grown women, claim it as a powerful term. What does that really mean? There are so many contradictions in our society, and the media is probably one of the worst perpetrators. Media uses girl power to sell us everything from face cream to candy bars to high heel shoes. Okay, so Ruthie Davis, she's a shoe designer, and on her website it says, Ruthie advocates her girl power philosophy in hopes of urging other young girls to work hard, dream big, and never compromise themselves as women. With such strong beliefs as this, it's no wonder a woman feels a sense of empowerment when slipping her feet into a pair of Ruthie Davis's shoes. Sounds really comfortable, doesn't it? Slipping your feet into a pair of these shoes. Next slide. These shoes. Really? Are these the shoes? Are these the shoes that are going to help women to change the world? Are these the shoes that you're going to wear to storm the governmental palaces and fight for your rights? Are these the shoes? Have any of you ever worn shoes like these? Some of you are wearing shoes like these right now. They're not comfortable. They're not shoes that are made for walking. These are certainly not shoes that are made for standing up and fighting for anything. In fact, the model can't even stand long enough to have her picture taken. These are not shoes that are made for empowering women. And anyway, who says we have to be tall in order to be taken seriously? Who says that we should be putting our feet into nerve-damaging devices of torture to be taken seriously as grown-ups? Why is that? The question is, how is it that we live in a world that tells us that we are free, but discourages us from being so? We live in a world where women are told that they can run the world, but we wind up saluting men instead. A world where money, by any means, even selling our bodies or betraying our principles, is more valuable than mutual respect between the genders. We are equal in theory, but practically, we are really much better off than we were just after the suffragist era. Next slide. So, where did we come from? All of this makes me wonder, where did we come from? When I hear people talk about how far we've come, I think to myself, is it really that far? There's no doubt that there have been some very, very dark times in the world of women's rights. And indeed, in relationship to those times, we have come really, really far. But in the bigger scheme of things, in the history of the whole world, have we really come a long way, or are we just completing a circle? In ancient Egypt times, particularly in records dating back before the Old Kingdom, we're talking about 4,000 to about 2,500 BC, records show that women were not nearly as oppressed legally and financially as they were just 150 years ago in most of the developed world. I can't say that women were entirely equal socially speaking, but they definitely had a lot of the same rights that we have today, and sometimes, in some ways, even more. The civilizations in ancient Egypt didn't treat women like chattel. They weren't the property of their husbands. Egyptian women had their own homes, their own finances, and in fact, oftentimes they weren't even legally married. They simply had domestic unions together with men, bare children, and then went their separate ways when things didn't work out, and they took all of their property with them. There was no legal subjugation of women. In the legal records of ancient Egypt, women were equally and financially the same. People were divided by social class rather than the genitalia that was between their legs. And this is important because what that tells us is that these women were in power in their lives in some way, shape, or form. Women were scribes, they were teachers, they were doctors. Nebbit, from the, I think she was 2500 BC, she was entitled the vizier, judge, and magistrate of the Egyptian court. And Merit Ta, in 2700 BC, was declared the first female physician in history. So for a long, long time, we've been working hard and we've been doing a lot of great things. This isn't to say necessarily that things were wonderful. There were a lot of horrible things that happened as well, but very, very similar to things today. For example, there was a great deal of prostitution and sexual slavery at that time for the lower classes, and that's still true today. The large majority of the impoverished women world do find themselves in the sex industry. So there's not a huge difference there. Only 13 out of 300 letters showed that women were actually in positions of administrative authority, and that's pretty much the same ratio that we have today. Today, just like it was back in ancient Egypt, women had a hard time walking through the streets. They didn't want to go too far outside of their own town for fear of violence and rape. Not very different from today. Most women don't feel safe traveling on their own. It's very, very few and far between the woman that feels safe enough to walk down the street alone at night because of the kinds of violence that can show up against them. Can I answer questions at the end? Okay. Women still gain the vast majority of their respect in our society, just like they did in ancient Egypt, from being pregnant and being married. And that's really not so different from what we see today. But there were other things that in the early world. There were other elements of equality in the early world. Sumerian society allowed women to hold positions of high power. Sorry. Excuse me. In fact, the first known author ever, the first known author and poet ever was actually a Sumerian woman named Enheduanna. She was also the high priestess of the Moon Temple, which was one of the highest positions of power in her society. There's further evidence that suggests even earlier civilizations, there was more equality between the sexes, and that equality was a very natural part of their society. In the Minoan civilizations, we see artwork and records of women and men working side by side, holding equal amounts of positions of authority, and there are pictures of women actually fighting with bulls. Women literally taking the bulls by the horns, and they're actually fighting side by side with men. So in some societies, there really was a true equality. Scholars of Native American tribes are now discovering that, in fact, what European settlers thought were very savage ways of treating women were very egalitarian in their ways. Women and men worked side by side. Your duties to your tribe were determined by what you were good at, not what sex you were. So sometimes women were hunters, and sometimes women were pot builders, and sometimes men were basket weavers, and sometimes men were farmers, and sometimes they were hunters. But it didn't matter what sex you were. It mattered what you were good at and how you contributed to the society. And that's how people were judged, and that's how people gained their power. Not through words like girl power. Girls were empowered because they were human and because they deserved to be treated like that. Next slide. So the question is, what happened? How did our rights become so eroded? How is it that we came to a point in our society where earning the right to vote is a huge step towards progress, where not being fired for getting pregnant is a victory for womankind. How did we get here? Some people say sedentarization, urbanization. There are as many theories as there are scholars studying it. But the question really is, how did it happen and where are we going to go from there? Excuse me. So, one thing is evident about how women's rights began to slowly devolve. And one of the things that we can see is that as societies grew more sedentary, as they started to stay in the same place more and more, women's roles in society grew away from participating in building a new community or building the new homes to the places where they were moving to and participating in the gathering and the hunting and all of the things that happened when a society moves from one place to another, and they started to become very important in the home, taking care of the children and, most importantly, breeding the children. Because they needed more workers. They needed more soldiers to protect the land that they had. They needed more and more people, and so women became more and more important merely as a breeder, merely as somebody whose main job it was to have children. And it suggested that what happened as we became more sedentary is that this role as breeder, the importance of fertility and purity and marriage, became not only reflected in the laws, but also the social values, and also in the religious texts that we saw. Some researchers even say that it's this new dogmatic worship that came towards the beginning of the Old Kingdom in Egypt that really started the decline of women's rights. Because we were now expected to be a valuable person, to be somebody who could have children. And that was our primary role at that point. Next slide. Whatever the cause, the consequences were severe. Women are now primarily functional to society as breeders at this time. Wombs, merely to bring forth more workers, more soldiers. They were also property, booty to be stolen by raiding and warring tribes. They were spoils to be won, sold, destroyed. Peaceful societies that didn't get on board with this idealism were annihilated and their women were enslaved. Women started at this period to give up their rights for their own property, their own financial security, in order to be protected by the men. And in the end, the women themselves became property that could be bought and sold. By the Roman Empire, things were so bad that if a woman were to legally marry her husband, he had the right to do with her as ever he saw fit, including selling her into slavery or even killing her. But if she didn't marry, she was under the control of her father. So things weren't any better for single women. Girls were married off before puberty and often raped until they were proven pregnant. Women had no freedom of choice whatsoever in terms of childbirth. And in fact, most women died giving birth because their uteruses had no time to heal between children. Women were seen as so valueless that girl infants were frequently murdered at birth. Needless to say, at this point, women had no voice in politics whatsoever. Things weren't much better by the Middle Ages. Women were under the complete domination of men by now. And in fact, it was a sin against God to disobey, yes, disobey a man, any man, one's husband, father, even one's own son. And women could be beaten to submission for doing so. Man ruled supreme. Then we get to the Renaissance, the supposed rebirth of society. But there wasn't much of a rebirth for women. What we really saw was just a transformation of the prejudices that were held against them. So instead of being important for being a breeder, we were instead important for being beautiful and pleasing and accommodating to other men. It's also interesting to note that it was around this same time that the witch trials became really very popular in Europe at that time. Any woman of any learning whatsoever was brought under question and persecuted for crimes of witchcraft, the evidence of which was generally pretty thin. And I don't know if you know much about the witch trials, but basically women were brought in, accused of witchcraft by men or women who were also maybe in the higher social classes, lower class women brought in, told they were witchcraft, forced to sign confessions, and then they were either burned or tortured or hung or executed in any number of horrible, horrific ways.
There was in the time of the Middle Age that the Catholic Church...
It started in the Middle Ages, but there was kind of a rebirth during the Renaissance. There was
like a little change, I think. Well, that's what I've been told.
Okay, we can talk about it in the end, okay? All right, so now more than ever, the way a woman looked and the way a woman pleased a man became the measure of her worth. And it took quite a few centuries for women to start fighting back against these systems that had enslaved them. The suffragist movement of the 1700s began when women started asking for an equal voice in their homes, their lives, and their government. The struggle began for the right to be their own people, to own their own property, to be educated, to buy and sell their assets of their own, and to vote, to have a voice in their government. They asked, and they were denied for many, many years. The following is a list of countries and dates, and it tells us when it was approved for women to vote and hold office. Look at these dates. Look at the dates that women were finally allowed to participate in what was called democracy. Finland, 1906. Imagine, just barely over 100 years ago, nowhere in the world was a woman entitled to political voice in her own country's election process, let alone the right to rule in that government as an equal. Just over 100 years ago.
Miss, sorry, can you leave it for a while?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Oh, sorry, can you go back to? Sorry. I don't know if you want. Do you want to copy all of that?
No, just their countries.
Okay. Oh yeah, for your each individual country.
Have all of you copied the date now?
You might be on the next 2 pages. There are several slides.
Mine is
That is when they permitted them to vote? Or?
Yes.
or when they were gender equality.
No, I don't think that there's gender equality in a lot of, as you might have been able to tell. Sorry. This is the date that it was passed that they could both vote and hold for office. So sometimes the vote came earlier and then the ability to sit for election came later. But this is the year that both of those rights were allowed without restrictions. Hold office, meaning you could run for president as a woman at that year. Yeah.
Have all of you copied the date?
You're up here. We'll pause for the next one.
That's fine.
Okay. Next. Ireland, United Kingdom. Notice Colombia still isn't on the list.
State.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Less than 60 years ago, women in this country were not entitled to vote and sit for office. Those women who fought for the right, the very basic right of a voice in their own government, are probably, some of them, still alive today. Oh, yeah. You need to know, actually. Yeah, no, correct. Okay? Next slide. Iran. Canada, 1960. Australia, 1962. Iran. We okay? Next slide. There you go. 1980. Okay, Switzerland, which is kind of known for being quite, liberal and forward-thinking. 1971. What is blacks? Okay, so South Africa, you'll see a few times throughout these slides. South Africa, all of South African women were not allowed to vote until 1994 because black women were not allowed to vote up until 1994. Blacks in general were not allowed to vote until 1994 at the end of apartheid. So imagine, It wasn't until less than 17 years ago that black South African women could go to the ballot and vote for their own president. For some of you, you were already born at that time, I think. Maybe. Okay, yeah. And that's pretty serious. I mean, this history is happening now in your lifetime. Kuwait, 2005. That's the last slide. Okay? But that's not necessarily every country in the world. Okay? There are still places in this world where women are not allowed to vote, where women don't have a voice in their own government. We'll get back to you on that. But I know there are. So I mean, there are some countries. Sorry about that. Okay. Has everybody found their country? No? What's your country? Japan? Japan is in there. Where is it? It might be in the last one. Can I give you the dates at the end? Yes. Can we go back and look this at the end? Okay. Yes. Wait, next slide. Great. Okay. So Irina Dunn, an Australian feminist, once wrote on a bathroom wall, "A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle." Her comment was directed at those that suggested that women need men to protect them and look after them. It has often been taken out of context and is usually attributed to Gloria Steinem, a famous American feminist, as an anthem. This has been brought up as an anthem for man-haters everywhere. But is that what feminism really is? A bunch of angry, ugly women who hate men and want to run the world through the oppression of men? Feminism is the radical notion that women are people. So obviously the answer is no. The feminist movement has made incredible strides in reversing the discrimination of women that started so many eons ago in the ancient world. Like most major movements for civil rights, the feminist movement is about equality and about finding the ways to give human rights to everyone, regardless of their gender. The feminist movement, over the last 100 years, has enlightened governmental bodies to recognize inequalities across all walks of modern life and demanded a commitment from them to improve things. They've instituted maternity leave laws and child care subsidy. They've established reproductive rights and equal opportunity employment for universities and major businesses. Countless women organizations have been founded by women to help women promote other women. Now, the ERA, Ms. Magazine, there is just heaps and heaps of these organizations that are serving to better the world for women. Throughout these years, the first laws that prohibited rape of a woman by her husband were passed in the U.S. Battered women's shelters began to open up around the world to help protect women and children from the world of violence and domination that they lived in. Sexual harassment laws were passed that protected women in the workplace. Margaret Thatcher was elected the first female Prime Minister of the UK. Sandra Day O'Connor was elected the first U.S. Supreme Court judge. Women now were legally equal to men in nearly every way in almost every developed world in the country. Almost every developed country in the world. Next slide. So what more could we want, right? I mean, that's enough already, isn't it? Do we really want to be opening our own doors and having to work for a living? Do we really want to open our own pickle jars? Shouldn't we just lay down our picket signs and call it a day? I mean, we're equal enough, aren't we? I'm not so sure. Women still earn less money than men for doing the same job almost everywhere in the world. Domestic violence and rape are still a huge, debilitating fear for women around the world, and they live with it each and every day. Every single minute of every single day, a woman somewhere is being raped. Women are still objectified and degraded and viewed as limited in the media and throughout society constantly, as we saw clearly. Degrading feminine stereotypes surround us from the moment we are able to open our eyes and focus. And because everyone tells us we're so much better off, and everyone talks so much about how equal women are, more than ever, women are brushed off as being feminazis or hypersensitive and hysterical when addressing injustices or prejudices that they experience or perceive. Even other women participate in the systematic silencing of the feminist movement. Here's what feminism is to me. What it is to me is the belief that people are equal and we deserve equal treatment, rights, and opportunities in society regardless of your gender identity. The acceptance and understanding that this is not our current global reality. And that's not okay. This has to change. Being open-minded and interested to becoming aware of the systems of inequality, even in their subtle and subversive forms, always looking for ways to improve it. The courage to identify and face gender-based inequality whenever it appears in all of its forms and face it head on, without fear of being called names or being belittled or being considered crazy. And the perseverance to demand equality, no matter how long it takes. Whether it happens in my lifetime or the lifetime of my great-great-grandchildren, it has to happen. We have to come back to a place where we are an egalitarian society and people are judged by the actions that they take and not the genitalia that they have. Who could have a problem with that? Who in the world could have a problem with fighting for equality and justice and human rights? Some people do. Ann Coulter, a U.S. political pundit, said, "Women have no capacity to understand how money is earned. They have a lot of ideas on how to spend it. It's always more money on education, more money on childcare, more money on daycare." Ann Coulter, a woman, a political pundit, talking on the show Politically Incorrect. Who else? Jerry Falwell, a Christian leader in the United States, said, "I listen to feminists and all these radical gals. Most of them are failures. These women just need a man in the house. Most of the feminists need a man to tell them what time of day it is and to lead them home. And they blew it. And they're mad at all men. Feminists hate men. They're sexist. They hate men, and that's their problem." I refer him back to the wise, albeit snarky, Irna Dunn. Irna Dunn, the one who said a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle? Yeah. Sigmund Freud, famous psychologist, said, "We must not allow ourselves to be deflected by the feminists who are anxious to force us to regard the two sexes as completely equal in position and worth." Thanks a lot, Freud. It must be all of our penis envy talking that makes us want equality all the time, eh? And of course, Rush Limbaugh. Who could forget Rush Limbaugh, the U.S. political radio talk show host, who coined the term feminazi, a clever portmanteau of feminism and Nazi, the irony of which is pretty funny because the Nazis were the first to kill the feminists and those who were fighting for reproductive rights. And that's why Rush Limbaugh calls feminists feminazis, because they're for reproductive rights, for a woman's control over her own body. So ironic that he calls them feminazis. Here's what he had to say. Sorry, next slide. Here's what Rush Limbaugh had to say. Feminism was established to allow unattractive women easier access to the mainstream. And I love the women's movement, especially when I'm walking behind it. Of course, most of what he says is to entertain the listeners and to be funny. But it says a lot about a society when that sort of lowbrow humor gets a laugh. That's not funny. All right, so this backlash against feminism, we made all of these strides, and then we have people like these people talking badly about feminism. What does it do to us? Well, here's one thing that it does to us. When people are surrounded by this kind of misogyny, even when women are misogynistic and encourage these attitudes towards other women, the results are pretty clear. Girl power can only take us so far. Ultimately, our growth towards equality is stunted by our fear to be seen as ugly, complaining, naggy, any of the negative stereotypes that are thrown out when women are expressing their concerns about their own equality. And God forbid we're unattractive. God forbid we aren't clean pleasing to the man. It's that whole Renaissance philosophy all over again. If we're not beautiful and pleasing our men at all times, where is our power in our society? We're called greedy, ugly, angry, haters, all sorts of horrible names and labels, deterring women from seeking true power, letting them know that they'll be letting go of the one thing that they know gives them some value, no matter how little that value may be. If they step forward and say, this is unfair. If they step forward and say, this is unfair, it must be because they hate men. It must be because they are too ugly to attract a man. It must be because they are horrible or defective in some way. Our attractiveness, be it physical or emotional, is the only ticket most of us have to gain even the slightest modicum of respect and acceptance. We are made acutely aware of this every day in the media, not only by politicians and entertainers who mock and deride feminist efforts, but from almost every aspect of society. From a very young age, ever younger all the time, girls are made aware that using their bodies and their keen intuition for emotional blackmail are their only tools for success. Rather than foster cunning wit and business savvy and clever ideas, knowledge, skills, girls instead are encouraged to focus on their sexuality and their sociability. Next slide. So how far can girl power take us? I mean, how much can a little term like girl power really do to save the situation, especially when we are awash in a sea of images like these? Can I go to the next slide? Okay, sorry. Yeah, just click on it. Maybe. There's supposed to be music behind this. Okay, if it doesn't work, we'll just talk you through the slides. So first we've got a series of Burger King ads. Very, 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 very erotic. For Burger King. This is a BMW ad. A young, very, almost prepubescent looking girl. You know you're not the first. This is an advertisement for a car, for a BMW car. Next one. Lee jeans. Girl, probably overage, but she's certainly dressed to appear as though she's not. Looking a lollipop, posed in a very sexual position. And this is an ad for Lee jeans. Where are her jeans? Next one. Little girls dressed to look like grown women. That's a little girl. There's another little girl. This one just came from a typical clothing store. Just an ad for a clothing store. I'm not sure which one. Next slide. This is an ad, you can't see here, for Vidal hair products. There's another ad for hair products. Here's Dolce & Gabbana, a woman being what looks like she's being attacked by a gang of men. Beautifully executed, the spring collection of Hitman lingerie. Woman executed in the head. Slave. Next image. Pictures of Rihanna. Rihanna, who openly came out as being in a relationship of domestic violence and then wrote a song about how sometimes that's not so bad. An advertisement on the side of a bus for a suitcase company. Next slide. This, again, is also for hair products. Look good in all you do. He's holding a large diamond necklace behind him. She has a large black eye, but fabulous hair. Next slide. This is an ad for PETA. For PETA. For PETA, the animal rights organization. Billions of animals are abused and violently killed because you eat meat. Get help. Visit alv.org.au. 55 million killed per year. Next slide. Another ad for PETA. All animals have the same parts. But they're trying to help animals. It's great. But why do they have to do it by objectifying women?
But it can be with a man.
It could be, but it wasn't. Here's another ad for Mercedes-Benz, another nice car ad for you. Anybody see a car? Next ad. Here's an ad for beer. It's for the women's body. Now, I'm not saying that these kinds of things create violence in women, against women, but when we objectify women in this way, when we literally turn their bodies into objects, this is an age-old tool of propaganda that has been used throughout the centuries to objectify human beings, and that is one of the first steps towards rationalizing violence against them. So it's hard for me to really wonder where violence comes from when we see so much violent imagery in our media. Here's Christina Aguilera coming out with her kind of dirty album. This was, I think, in the 1990s, and she was kind of breaking away from that Disney girl stereotype into being a real woman. This was her definition of a real woman. And here's Britney Spears. It's my prerogative. What is prerogative? Prerogative is your choice. It's your right to choose what you want for you. It's my prerogative. It's my decision. Here's another ad. You know what you're feeling when you find the perfect pair, and we're not talking shoes. Can you close up on that, the next one? We're not talking shoes. This is an ad for breast enhancements, for breast implants. You can find saline or silicone. There's lots of different kinds. We'll find the perfect fit for you. This is an ad for men's cologne. Here's an ad for a gym. Good girls don't get fat. Good girls don't get fat. And there is here a perfectly average-sized young girl writing up lines as a punishment in the classroom. Good girls don't get fat. Be fit, be healthy. Put something hot in your stocking. Quick trim, extreme burn. There's Kim Kardashian. I love my new body. Next one. You'll spend more time with your boss. Be stupid. Diesel jeans. I'm not even sure what that means. But what I do know is that it's sending a very clear message that being stupid is going to get you attention. And at least she has jeans on, unlike this one, who is also an advertisement for Diesel. Smart may have the brains, but stupid has the balls. Be stupid. Diesel. Hot women, be stupid. Next line. Inside every blonde is a blonder blonde, waiting to get out. Look at the look on her face, holding the sunglasses, coyishly, flirting with you, selling a hair product. Next slide. And here are some popular TV shows in the United States. They're madder, they're badder, they're back. Bridezillas. Next one. Notice here, their eyes have been cut off, and they've actually been semi-dissected. This is the actual banner of the show. I did not edit this or cut this. This is exactly how it comes on the TV show. And notice as well, she has a bouquet of syringes, Botox syringes, presumably. Bridalplasty. This was a show, have you guys heard about this? This is a show that was shown where the girls live in a house together and they compete. They compete for plastic surgery. And every week, another bride was sent home, and the woman who won a beautiful, fabulous wedding, plus a lot of plastic surgery, as much as she wanted. Next slide. We also have America's Next Top Model, with all of the girls posing. Down on the floor, posing in different positions. All of these women, America's Next Top Model. Here we have Pretty Little Liars, a popular TV show. These young girls, who supposedly are in high school, have some very torrid tales to tell. But just look at the body position. Just look at the way that they're seated together, the way that they close themselves in or expose themselves. There's definitely an image here to young girls. And this is a show that's marketed really to 12 to 15-year-olds. This is a show that has some pretty serious adult themes, but isn't really, but yet it's being marketed to very young kids. Oh, present girls. Girls of the Playboy Mansion, The Girls Next Door, it was called. And notice the way that we have Hugh Hefner sitting on a throne surrounded by these blondes who are just kind of draping all over him. Here we've got another one like that. Two girls, Gossip Girls, licking an ice cream cone together coyishly. Another TV show that's really geared towards pretty young kids. And yet, this is Rolling Stone magazine, and they're clearly positioned in a way that is implication of seduction and sex. So what message are we sending kids when we put that on the cover? And then we've got Hollywood's obsession with the perfect body. Julia Roberts, lumpy and frumpy. Julia Roberts? If we have to live up to the standard that Julia Roberts is too fat, what chance do any of us have? I mean, we have all sorts of really horrible comments made about women. Snooki, double wide. Why do we feel the need to take so much criticism out on these women who are just trying to live their lives? And then stylists tell all. Who's really bald? Who's got scary skin? Who wears a girdle? Who's a secret slob? Who goes wild with wax? Who's just plain gross? So again, we get these magazines that are just obsessed with finding flaws in other people. So the question is, how far can girl power really take us? There's a good reason that the UN is still exploring the improvement of women's rights. Remember, this single committee was just formed last year. There are still so many signs that equality between the genders is far out of our reach. Only 9% of the world's leaders are women. Only 1% of the world's total wealth belongs to women. The vast majority of women don't even have enough property to borrow money to better their lives. 1/3 of women are victims of violence in their lifetimes, and those are the ones that have the power and the courage to report it. So imagine what's not even being reported. Misogynistic attitudes are everywhere. Some women even harbor them for other women and themselves. As far as men, most, unfortunately, are blissfully ignorant of the privilege in society and oblivious to the ways they condone and even contribute to the oppression of their mothers, sisters, daughters, wives, lovers, and friends. No one seems to want to be the one who is brave enough to say, enough is enough. There has to be a change. So it's time to ask ourselves, what is it going to take for us to see a real change? What are we going to do to take action? Thank you.